In the little book of Proverbs here, we looked at the fool. And the fool, oh, hello, Georgia. The fool compared to this comparison and contrast thing that Proverbs does. The fool and the wise person. Good morning, Peter. Wide awake, plenty of caffeine, doing good. Good man, yeah. So last week, compared the wise person versus the fool. And in keeping with that style of comparison and contrast, we will look at today the hard worker. The Proverbs, you got different translations, the diligent worker versus one of my favorite words, the sluggard. Morning, Josh. I missed a couple other people. I saw Georgina and James. Saw you come in. Dante. Can I call you Dante? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. I call you Don Juan. I call you Dante. I call you all kinds of Dons. Yeah. Came across a proverb that's kind of controversial. I want to ask you. Ooh, wait. Not everybody's paying attention. All right. Dante wants to introduce a controversial proverb. My favorite kind. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's Proverb, it's in chapter 20.
Chapter 20. Chapter 20, verse 30.
It says, physical punishment cleanses away evil, and such discipline purifies the heart.
Yes. May I use the NIV translation? Which translation do you have there?
NLT.
The New Living Translation, which is, I call it the Lori translation. The New Lori translation, NLT. The NIV would say, blows and wounds cleanse away evil, and beatings purge the inmost being. Another way to put it, heart, inmost being. Okay. Man, that's a nice shine you got going on there, Ryan. You're looking good. You put the baby soft on that today. That's looking good. Okay, so what is controversial about that?
I don't know.
You don't like it, do you?
It just seems like if you beat somebody, you're doing good. And that's not, I don't know.
Well, it's doing some good. It does something. Let's put it this way. It's doing something good, okay? And so, since I have a wonderful class we've already plowed the ground of like dozens and dozens of Proverbs, and we've laid the groundwork and the foundation, and we've set up the structure and so on. They probably have a pretty good idea what this Proverbs saying. So without me jumping right into it, I'll see what everybody else thinks. And by the way, we could use a couple other translations. Where's Jason? Oh, hey, do you have his Bible with you? New American Standard.
I do not.
You do not. That would be good right now. So what? Would you be so kind as to read the New American Standard of Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 30. Okay. Beating people up, right? That's what we think, right? King James Version back there. Okay. Any others? Who am I forgetting? Seems like there's Vera's sick today because she usually does the contemporary English version, the CEV, which is kind of neat. And somebody always has a paraphrase. Is that Julie? Oh, now that we've studied through the committee-approved translations, now we will do a paraphrase from, is it the Message that you have? Or, yeah, which is so nice to do. I like that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, all right, now we've gotten our word study out of the way. Looking at it in context. And Don believes this is controversial, but he's not really sure why it's controversial. I think it's just it doesn't set well with you. Sure. You're going with that? Is that? Yeah, okay.
Also, in my Bible,
yes.
I have an asterisk, and then it says the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain.
That happens very often. That's why I went around the room getting committee translations, because I don't know, any of you study Hebrew? No, I didn't think so. So one of the ways that you can do that is to see what the translators struggled with by looking at committee translations, because every one of those translations had scholarly people who know the Hebrew and the thing that they struggled with. That's very often you run into that situation in the Old Testament where there's a Hebrew term that is uncertain. And you have to come to a conclusion based on the context. Yeah, do you have it? Oh, I like the ESV. That's what we use over at CBS. Are you using the ESV? Okay. You got it right now? We could read it? If not, Peter can find it on his fancy phone, ESV, or his iPad. So while Peter's looking up that particular translation, which I'm going to guess is going to lead us pretty much to the same thought. So now, class, what is this proverb teaching us? Because Proverbs are trying to teach us something always, and it has to do with how to live and godly living, wise living. And I've stalled long enough to give you lots of time to think about this particular proverb, right? What'd you come up with? Oh no, oh no, oh no. It's talking about beating you. It's talking about beatings. It's talking about a stick maybe? Or a whip. It's talking about even maybe, blows with a hand. It's talking about corporal punishment. Okay? All right. Excellent. To get understanding what the wording and is going on. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. There are consequences. In good point. I think punishment plays a part here. That this is in fact punishment. Cheryl, did you have your hand raised, or I just... No, okay. Others? Morning, Jack. Others? Thoughts on this? Oh, Kimmy. Oh, blows and wounds cleanse away evil and beatings purge. That's nice. We take a physiological point of view, that when we bleed, it cleans away all the dirt and stuff. But I'm afraid that's not where he's going, though. Even though that's a truth. We know, anybody's taken basic first aid, let the wound bleed a little. Let it clean it out. And but I think this is a very practical proverb. Morning, Kimmy. Any more thoughts? We should always do that, Jules. We should always do that. But I'm of the opinion that what it meant then means what it means now. And that, but let me refresh you on something with Proverbs too. Okay, remember Proverbs aren't necessarily what do we call it, a direct truth? Because we talked about gray hair. Gray hair is a crown of splendor, and it's for those who have attained old age and have gotten wise. Are all people with gray hair wise? No. No. So Proverbs are a general truth in life. Generally speaking, this is true. And it worked for me. I'm telling you, it worked for me. This truth. Of course, Jack, he never got a spanking. He was such a good boy. I know, he was just a perfect child his whole life. Now, as an adult, he needed a lot of spankings, but that's another story. No. Any more thoughts about this? Would you like to park on it between now and next week and study it, or?
I was just looking at the rest of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's talking about stealing things, how that's bad, and what'll happen if he finds out that you do stuff like this, and it all pertains to that last verse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you do this, you're bad. If you do that, you're bad. If you steal this, you're bad. If you steal this, you're bad. If you do this, and then this is what happens if you do all these things.
Right, right. Well, let me, as you continue to think about this, let me look at kind of a somewhat comparative passage in the New Testament, Romans chapter 13, where it talks about people who need to submit to the governing authorities. In other words, you need to obey the law. Okay? And God says that the principle of law and authority is established by Him. God set it up that way. Now, it doesn't mean all the authorities behave in the way that they should, but God had set up the system of authority. Kids, you're supposed to submit to your parents. People, we're supposed to submit to the law, and we hope and pray that those people are submitting to God. Okay, that principle of authority is established by God. And he says that Paul is going on, he who rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has established. He's instituted this system of authority. And he says, rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the one in authority? You ready? Then do what's right. It's a simple principle, you know. You don't want to get beat by the authorities. Do what's right, if that in fact is the punishment for doing wrong. He goes on. For he is God's servant to do good, but if you do wrong, be afraid. For he does not bear the sword. Of course, this passage we're talking about back here is a stick or a whip or something. He's talking about the sword. Okay? He says for God's servant to do good. But if you do wrong, you better be afraid, because he doesn't bear the sword for nothing. He is God's servant, an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. So God has established authorities to enact punishment. What's the purpose of punishment? Drive out the evil, to punish the evil. Okay, so this principle of blows and wounds or corporal punishment, generally speaking, is the same thing that we apply to young children when they're being spanked. I know not everybody agrees with it and has different ways of dealing with it, but the fact of the matter is, sometimes you can't reason with a little one, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's evil. But but the idea that physical punishment can cause a change of our innermost being, and so it's a simple principle. They're doing wrong, beat the snot out of them, they might change their mind. Okay? And so, and by the way, that was an exaggeration and it was supposed to be a joke. Nobody laughed, so it obviously flopped. But the idea that corporal punishment can bring about behavior and a change of heart and change of mind, and I'm telling you what, it did in me. And I'm not saying that the punishment that I received was necessarily right. I think it was more carried out in anger. But anyhow, I remember the last time I stole something from the store, and I kind of need to build it up, because when my mom was single and we were living in Ann Arbor, and I look at it in comparison to my own grandkids now, here I am, I'm in the 4th grade, and I'm running the streets of Ann Arbor. I mean, literally everywhere on my bike, you name it. And one of the trades I picked up as a little kid was, we didn't have any money, so I just learned how to steal stuff, and I got pretty good at it. So then my mom remarried, and we moved to Milan. I brought my trade to Milan, and I went into IGA, which any of you from Milan might know where the old IGA store was, and I thought, I got this easy. This is a small town. I'm a big time thief, man. These guys, they can't touch me. And so I did my usual thing where I stole a few things, but I bought a 10-cent brownie, kind of make it look like I was a legit customer in there, but my coat was filled. So, and I walk out the door and I thought, cool. Then this big hand grabbed me in the neck and pulled me back in the store. I thought, whoa, what's going on? He took me back into the back room. Now, this is back in the 60s, And why do I say that? Because things are a little bit different today. By the way, I didn't resist him. I thought he might kill me if I did. Anyhow, he takes me into the back room, and he calls the police. And the police come and get me. Now, I'm in the 5th grade now at this time. They put me in the back of the police car, in the back, and they take me to the police station. And my mom and my stepdad come and get me. And so then, yeah, I'm already feeling terrible. Then they take me home after they, do the whole record thing on me, and then I go to the house. And as I'm walking into the house, my mom's screaming at me and yelling and just give me everything, and then my stepdad, then he walks in and he gives me a right cross. Boom! I went to the floor like a sack of potatoes. And then my mom, it was good and it was bad. Number one, it really hurt. Number two, but it was good because my mom started yelling at him instead of me. And so then while she was yelling at him, I crawled off and went to my room. But here's the moral of the story. I never stole another thing in my life. Now, I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm not saying that's good practice to punch your stepkid in the face, and knock him down. But it cleansed away evil. And it changed the way I thought about stealing. I guarantee you that. So, anyhow, that's what it's saying. Now, it's not saying it's not. That's the thing about Proverbs. It will report the truth. And a general truth. Because what might be another person's response to getting punched in the face like that? I'm going to get a ball bat and I'm going to hit this guy while he's sleeping. I'm just saying it, generally speaking, when people get a physical punishment for doing things that are wrong, generally speaking, it'll drive that away from them and purge their inmost being. I'm telling you what, it purged me. Okay? So, it may have been what I needed at the time. I'm not saying it's one size fits all. I'm not even saying he did right. So I was able to change my kids' behavior without doing that. So anyhow, there you have it. Let's get into the hard work versus the laziness. The diligent worker versus the who? The sluggard. Don't you just love that word, the sluggard? What do you think of when you think of the sluggard? Come on, Oh, that sloth commercial. His drawings. Yeah, the sloth. What else you think of when you think of a sluggard? Sluggard. A slug, right? A slug on the ground, just not moving. Right? Okay. So let's begin with the sluggard. Chapter 24, verses 30 through 34. Where am I at? There it is, 27:30. Okay. I went past the field of the sluggard, past the vineyard of the man who lacks judgment. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed, and I learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a bandit, and scarcity like an armed man. Okay? So it's interesting, Solomon is describing this sluggard, this person who is lazy, and he begins with the effect and then moves towards the cause. So what is the effect? He begins with the effect and then he moves to the cause. Yeah, right. So, you've got his fields that are overgrown, covered with weeds. Stone wall was in ruins, right? And what was the cause? I think I'll just... Yep, a little sleep, a little slumber. You just say a little folding of the hands. And scarcity, like an armed man. That's interesting. Scarcity, like an armed man. Or another translation might be, or like a vagrant, and scarcity like a beggar. Okay? So this laziness comes in and it steals your stuff from you. So next thing you know, you're a beggar. You got nothing. Chapter 20 in verse 4, in season. Let's talk about what you're supposed to do in season. Chapter 20 and verse 4. A sluggard does not plow in season, so at harvest time he looks but finds nothing. Well, plowing in season. Well, I tell you what, you guys are not familiar, who haven't been to the Middle East area, but you know, in the wintertime, our wintertime it would be, is what they call their rainy season. You know, in the Middle East, you don't really have winter. You have rainy season and you have dry season. And so during the rainy season is when you plow and when you plant your seed and so on. But I tell you what, you know, it's miserable. It's cold, it's yucky, and it's a lot easier just to sit in the house and drink some chai and eat some chapati and not go out there and do the hard work of plowing in those muddy fields in the cold. All right? So, he doesn't do it. And at harvest time, he looks, but he finds nothing. Okay, so how many farmers do we have here? Any? Farmers? I don't mean gardening, I mean farmers. You get your livelihood from growing crops. Anybody? No. So how do we apply this then? What would be the modern equivalent? What would be your equivalent of what this proverb is saying? I mean, this is obvious for those who are farmers, that if you don't go and do the hard work and, you know, fight the miserable conditions, get your seed in the ground, that come harvest time, you look out the fields, there's none there. How do you expect to go out to a field that you haven't planted and you go out and expect to receive a harvest? Well, that's common sense. But now, since none of you are farmers, and I think this passage does apply to every one of us, tell me, how does this apply to us? Give me a modern equivalent of this to you non-agrarians. Yes, Timmy. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's almost funny, isn't it? You know, you get paid every 2 weeks, you know, and you don't go into work for 2 weeks, but you walk up to the boss and say, hey, where's my paycheck? He's like, hit the road, pal. You know, somebody else. Yes. You're not. Matter of fact. Yeah. Beautiful example for people who burn wood for their primary source of heat. If you're like, maybe I'll cut wood tomorrow. Maybe I'll cut wood tomorrow. You do that, and then comes heating season, you're freezing, you got no wood. I mean, it wasn't that many years ago, that could be a lethal situation. You could die. You know, you had to do what you were supposed to do at the right time when you could do it. Otherwise, you might die. Freeze to death. By another example, which, by the way, remember I set up, I should say the proverb writer set up, is that he doesn't plow in season, okay, not at the right time, but there's a reason why he's not going out. Adverse conditions. It's cold. It's hard work. It's work. The ground's hard. Well, in this particular time, it's kind of mushy. That's what they mean by in season. So it's muddy, it's yucky, it's hard to walk through, and it's, you know, you don't have a nice modern tractor here. So think of the things that would inhibit people from wanting to go to work. Right? What are those things? Well, you got to get up in the morning. My little Maddie, when she's got to get a full-time job, it's going to be tough. Hopefully school's going to train her, because she inherited this probably from her grandpa, but anyhow, she was not a morning person. If work had just started at the crack of noon, she'd be fine, you know? Yeah. So the first thing that got me motivated was going to get my driver's license. That's when I first started not And then when I got in the military, they disciplined you. Going back to your Proverbs 20:30, okay? Yeah. They never had to hit me, but they threatened to. It's kind of like Tommy. When I told him at school, I said, if you want to get him to behave, just smack the kid next to him. It'll work fine. He'll behave, and that's how it was with me too. You know, so they didn't have to smack me, but I just the fear of them smacking me got me trained. So there's these unpleasant things that we have to overcome in season, so that when it comes time, we will receive the harvest that we need, so we can live, not freeze to death, so we have paycheck, so we can feed our family. You know, so we have to overcome those things that are not necessarily pleasant in life. It's discipline, which is a major theme throughout Proverbs, is it not? 21 and verse 15. 21 and verse 15. When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers. I have no idea why I have that. I've got the wrong verse here for some reason. No, it's verse 5. I don't know why I said 15. 5. The plans of the diligent lead to profits as surely as haste leads to poverty. And that's still not the right. I know it's in here somewhere. It's a 5 or a 15. Park that one for a second, but a lazy person's life is very frustrating. So why is it the lazy person's life is frustrating? 25. There it is. I knew it had a 5 in it. And I knew it was in chapter 21. The sluggards. Oh, I love the sluggards. Craving will be the death of him, because his hands refuse to work. All day long he craves for more, but the righteous give without sparing, blah, blah, blah. So it's a frustrating life. Why is the lazy person's life so frustrating? Because he can't get other people to do stuff for him. Which, by the way, brings up an interesting point now. Hopefully I'll get to before we're finished here today. What else frustrates the lazy person? Why is it frustrating? Because obviously he's not getting what he wants, right?
Well, he gets what he wants initially, and then when he needs something later, it doesn't happen.
Explain that a little bit more.
Well, actually...
What does he initially want?
Well, you mistakenly went to these other proverbs. I was looking for the one you were looking for, and I found another one. 20:13. And it says, if you love to sleep, you will end in poverty. Keep your eyes open, and there will be plenty.
Oh, okay, good. So what you're saying is the initial thing he gets that he wants is what? Sleep. So he gives in to his desire to not work. I like this old-timey buddy of mine. He said, Tom, I'm not afraid of work. I can lay down right next to it and go to sleep in a minute. And I said, okay. So frustration is when you're doing one thing, but you're not getting what you want. Isn't that right? Isn't that what frustration is? Okay. So he's snoozing, but where does the frustration part then come in? So he
Have something later.
so
Because he was sleeping.
that's right. That's right.
You know?
Yeah, it's a frustrating life. So because of his laziness, then when it comes time to the point of need, it's not there. Very frustrating. Very conflicted. What's the answer, Peter, for this poor guy? Work. You're just going to have to defer that sleep till you get the work done. Chapter 15 and verse 19, the way of the sluggard is blocked with thorns, but the path of the upright is a highway. Okay? So what does this say about the quality of life for the sluggard? It's going to be a hard life. Okay, again, we're not farmers. I imagine you don't have a problem going out to get the water and having thorns everywhere. And so what are your thorns for your lack of discipline at work, what would the thorns be for you? Huh? Debt? Oh, okay. You're charging up the card instead of working and paying cash, right? Yeah. We're going to get into that in depth later on in Proverbs about debt. Proverbs speaks very specifically about debt. And Tom will be my expert finance guy when we get to that point. He'll want you to build up wealth, right? Wealth management, Old National. We have to get our shameful plug in every now and then. Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're not going to. And you got to have a want to. I think that's what this is talking about. And this is why the lazy person's life is so frustrating. And that's why they have a very poor quality. For instance, maybe none of you have struggled with what this topic's talking about, but I have all my life. I started out a very lazy person, and I feel good that I believe there has been growth every year. I know there has been, and I'll give you an example. When I first moved to Tecumseh, I was only like 32. And so one of our church members came over in the wintertime to visit, and we had just had a bunch of snow. And this church member had the gift of confrontation. And said, "Tom, what are you, lazy? Why don't you shovel your sidewalk?" You know what my answer was? Because, by the way, also, most lazy people, I can speak for myself, are smart Alex. Okay? So what do you think my answer was? Uh-oh, that would have been a better answer, but I didn't think of that one. Huh? Waiting for him? No. I said, that's what I said. Don't worry, it'll melt in the spring. Just give it enough time. It'll just melt and go away. But that was a lazy answer. Smart alecky, lazy answer. Because the quality of life, that was the thorns in my life. You know, they had to trudge through this snow and slip and all that. But I'm glad he taught me that, because I thought about it and thought, you know, I'm just being lazy. And from that time on, I shovel my sidewalk and I shovel my driveway, and it's a much better quality of life. The other thing are the leaves. Do you pick up your leaves? If you don't, and they're all piled up, and what's it look like in the springtime? You got a messed up lawn. Big patches is killing the grass and stuff like that. But what a joy when you keep up with your leaves. Springtime comes, pow, nice looking lawn. It's beautiful. So think about the different, if you don't take care of your car, how about your car? I'm too lazy to change the oil. I'm too lazy to wash it, you know, and on and on. What's your quality of life going to be? You have busted down vehicles. You have messed up houses. You know, so that's what the proverb writer is saying here. Quality of life of a lazy person. And we have our thorns today when we fail to be diligent and take care of what we've gotten. Okay, I've got time for one more here, and that's 22 and verse 13. One of my favorite ones, and it has a little bit of humor in it, I think. At least that's what I'm taking. Chapter 22 and verse 13. The sluggard says, "There's a lion outside, or I'll be murdered in the streets." So, I mean, of course, can't go outside. If I go outside, go out and work, go out and do something, lion might come, eat me. So I might as well stay here and watch The Price is Right, or something like that. That's an excuse, right? That's an excuse.
So what's the opposite of that? Then the guy that takes the sword and goes and kills the lion before he goes to work?
Now, I think the point is there are no lions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are no lions. Yeah, there are no lions. No lions. And the point is, excuses are like elbows. Everybody has one, and they're all different. I don't care what translation you heard. That's mine, and I'm going with it, okay? So what are some of the popular excuses today for getting out of work? To keep you from working. I know one that I've used many a time, but how about you? Huh? Ain't no jobs. Man, there's jobs everywhere. You know, there are more jobs today than there are people to fill them. And you realize there are some jobs that are available today that some people refuse to work. When I was a kid, do I sound like an old geezer now? Start out that way? When I was a kid, but it's the truth. I'm not exaggerating or embellishing it, but we used to do things like weed gardens. I used to pick corn. I used to pick pumpkins. It was hard work. Huh? Tomatoes. In this neck of the woods over here. But we have kids, we have young people today who won't do that. Okay, there's an excuse for you. Woo! Yeah, I thought it was the coolest thing when we were picking corn. Had to get up. It was still dark, out in the fields, wet, cold. By noon, you're burning up, making 75 cents an hour. And we were all planning how we're going to spend all that money, you know. We're going to buy go-karts and mini bikes and all this kind of stuff, you know. But end up just spending it at the restaurant, getting grilled cheese. That's all I had enough money for. But anyhow, there you go. We'll pick up next week right there. Think of some absurd, and it was absurd. The absurdity of, you know, the lion outside. What's the lion outside for you? It might rain out today. I can't get out there today. You know, might rain. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Pick it up there next week.